Classes in session.
And welcome to Unlearn 16 Classes in Session. Today, I am lucky to have Stu sitting right across from me. Welcome, dig in
I
for a 4-hour episode.
I'm lucky. The very time you have me on your show, I'm like excited. I'm like vibrating right now.
Well,
It could
listen,
be the caffeine too.
I've had 8 coffees, um, and I know that we're normally funny. I mean, I think that's just naturally we get together. I feel like I giggle, so that's just who we are. But today we're going to go down a bit of a different road, and I I wanted to do this podcast for a while, coming off the Roe v. Wade overturning, and we've talked about it a little bit. I think we have a lot of experience when it comes to different aspects of the social media part, and I think we just need to put it all on the table, and maybe it'll
Yeah,
be like a cathartic hour to 7, just to have all the sorts of feelings and put a bunch of things. There's only so much you can do on TikTok. For those who don't know Stu, he's this amazing phenom on TikTok. He has his own
me
podcast
too.
that hopefully I'm going to be on if I get, educated enough
Next
to
week.
come on. But today, this is where we're going to be. And there's been a lot of decisions going on with this particular Supreme Court, and I think they're all very intertwined. So maybe just get your initial vibe. Like, how do you feel right now about what's, for those who don't know, I can't imagine people that don't know, but the Supreme Court of the United States has just overturned a 50-year precedent protecting a woman's right to choose, a person's right to choose, excuse my language there, a person's right to choose and have control over their own bodies. That is one of about 6 decisions. I've never heard so many decisions coming out of the Supreme Court this fast, which I also find interesting. It's like they're not even thinking about it. They had them
Oh
all ready.
God, no.
Oh, here's one, here's one, here's one. But this is where we're going to start. So, Stu, where do you, what's this? What do you feel? What the one thing or main thing do you want to start with?
I honestly like it's really interesting because I think we all knew it was coming.
Oh
Like
yeah, well, it was
it,
leaked
it
before.
was leaked, and you made that really powerful video on TikTok, kind of
Mhm.
summing up a lot of the thoughts that I had as well. But I think when it actually hit, even though I was prepared for it, like I knew it was coming, it's still it hollows you out because and yes it like to any of those who are gonna kind of like turn up their nose and say, well, we're not directly affected because we're not American. It does, it affects everyone.
Of course it
It
does.
affects everyone who knows anyone with a uterus. um that this fundamental right of um choice and autonomy over your own body
Hmm.
and the choices there within to be up to the legislature to it's insane to me, and it's insane that people can defend that the stance of the Supreme Court saying that like they've won something. And I think that's like the crux of where I'm just like I don't get it. And I see a lot of people reacting on social media, on the news programs coming on being like, I feel like we all just need to find middle ground or like agree to disagree. And I'm like, agree to disagree about about what? Like you agree to disagree about like where you want to eat dinner. Like you don't agree to disagree about someone's right of like life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness and the freedom to make decisions about the what's happening with their own body. Like you don't agree. You're not like, oh yeah, yeah, I agree to disagree with that one.
And I think it's just there's so many ins and outs of this. I mean, so everybody that's listening understand this. There are also we're not just talking about abortion in we're for the most part we have like 17 I think to 25 states that are going to have trigger laws that are going to instantaneously criminalize abortion. Many of those states are criminalizing it in every specific situation. I don't want to spend too much time on this because I feel like if I spend too much time on this, somehow people are they think I'm invalidating somebody's just I their personal right to choose, which I'm not. But just so everybody understands, this allows states like Kentucky to say there is no exception. Rape, not an exception. Incest, not an exception. Ectopic pregnancy, that's going to kill both people, not an exception. There are, the mother having diabetes, which will probably kill, not an exception. And a lot of people don't understand what, okay, so but why would they do that? Why would they have those thick lines? Well, I'll tell you why. Because within those states, you're going to have a huge chunk of people that still think it's a woman's right to choose. So what they're going to do is use things like the mother's health was at risk, right? I mean, in order to get around state legislatures. So state legislatures are going to have to make these very thick lines. And not only are, you know, fetuses not going to be born anyways, because the mother's going to, they're both going to go down in these particular situations. And ectopic pregnancy, there, there, there's no possibility of a live birth there. There's no possibility. It's going to rupture. It's going to kill them both. So all of those things being equal, I think a lot of people, will talk about those things and they'll say, well, in that case or in that case. And as soon as you start saying that, you start to understand the reality of the complexities of this issue, that states have then boiled down to no complexities. It is what it is. If you don't want to be pregnant, don't have sex.
Oh my god, that's the most insane. This is like, I think the stand. I'm sorry, I'm gonna say this, and it's gonna sound so. The stance of like of punishing a woman, um, and suggesting that they be more
Discerning.
responsible in their sexual habits, but not assign the same energy or the same restrictions or the same stance to the men. Like there's I can't remember where exactly she is a governor or, but saying that a woman should control who ejaculates inside of her.
I don't know who
I'm
she is.
like,
I have to look it
how
up.
is that? How can you puff your chest out and say that being a woman of yourself?
Listen,
Like,
that's it. Not only, well, let me deal with the first part of what you said, the fact that we're blaming women for not having responsibility. You know what's funny? I heard a piece of somebody's TikTok in which he said, we've always blamed women to control men.
yes,
Always. The patriarchy has been created to teach and train women how they are supposed to control men, because men are uncontrollable, right? Men are what? Savage and beast. I don't know what their description of men are. So therefore, it's always up to women. And this mentality doesn't surprise me at all. We still live in a rape culture. We still live in a society where, whether somebody says it out loud or not, a lot of people think, what was she wearing? Where was she going? Did she lead him on? Did she? Right? So many different scenarios where that ends up being the line of thought and the pervasive kind of culture. Of course it then spills over to pregnancy. Of course it does.
exactly.
Of course that's what it's about.
It's just, it's so beyond disgusting that we continue to blame women for the actions of men. And now I just like, I guess, I guess as I sit here and there are these people who will defend this and say, well, it's not a constitutional right. It was never in the original, um, the original document in what, 1788, 1788.
1787, right? Or 1789, I think it was signed into.
Yeah, in operation. So it wasn't the original document.
Yeah. Okay.
Therefore, it can't be. Therefore, it's not a constitutional right. Therefore, it can be taken away. Therefore, anything is legislated. No one should be comfortable um, with constitutional rights that are awarded to you through the legal system or the um, uh, a legal decision. So then I ask out loud to myself in my apartment, like, where is the line? Like, once you pull away those rights, like, I feel like everyone should look at the Constitution in the States look at it in its original state, minus all the amendments that went through. So Roe v. Wade fell into the 14th Amendment. So,
But
like,
even if you look at those amendments, because the amendments are still technically part and parcel of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights are a part of the Constitution, and those amendments are the part of the Constitution. That's fine. But we also look at when those were written. You're right, but when you're going to read it, it's one of two ways, and it's funny because I have a little bit of a. We all know what's underpinning all of this. Underpinning all of this is a very, very right wing, extremist, fundamentalist Christian um, economic powerhouse. That's what it is. Period. They want whatever they thought U.S. culture was before, when the Americans were still, slaughtering the indigenous and keeping out all of the unwanted immigrants that were less than, right? I mean, I can't foresee anything else. So I look at the Constitution two ways. You either take it literally, literally,
literally.
that's it. In which case, we're losing a boatload of rights, including things like Brown versus Board of Ed. That's nowhere in there. Nowhere
Right,
in
but
nowhere
no.
in there does it say that segregation is a problem. Nowhere in there.
Mhm.
None. It doesn't say it at all. It was interpreted, it was applied, right? In there, it says your right to bear arm if you're in a militia. Great, join a militia. Join one. It said, and so you start looking at all these. I'm like, either apply it literally. And if I start applying it literally, everybody in the United States, everybody starts going, oh, this document's not nearly effective, good enough. It doesn't protect us enough. It doesn't do anything. This document is absolute garbage. And we tear it up. That's choice number
Exactly.
one. Choice number two, we look at it like a living document and we say, okay, as we progress, we take things like these prime words, like you said in the beginning, life, liberty, right? The pursuit of happiness. What do those mean? And those are the big three, right? What do those first three mean? And how do we expand and include rights to make sure that every citizen in the United States has access to all three? And if we're going to do that, then it gets messy, but then those rights get the protected rights get bigger and bigger and bigger, not more narrow. I think it's hysterical that Republicans right now are talking about state rights when the Republican Party, and everybody loves to ignore this, was created to put states in their place when it came to slavery,
Mhm.
right? That's the whole point of ending slavery and putting the Constitution was the federal government now was going to tell the states how they formulated and created economic systems. And all of a sudden, it was okay. Everybody that talks about Lincoln that's a Republican today, I'm like, listen, if Lincoln was at your convention, the dude would become Democrat in about 37 seconds, and that's only because he walks slow because he's super tall. That's it. You are not the same. He was a progressive. The
Yeah.
Republican Party, as it stands now, and I do say the whole Republican Party because I don't see anybody in the Republican Party besides Cheney, who's about to be kicked out any second, representing anything progressive. Nothing. It's
My
all
God.
progressive. It's all about conserving. It's all about going. That's not progress. That is not Lincoln. That is not what Lincoln created. People talk about the party switch. I don't know if you heard of this debate before. That's what they're talking about. They're talking this idea that the main difference between Democrats and Republicans used to be this. It's very simple. Republicans wanted more state and national power. The Democrats wanted more power to the states. That's it. That doesn't that's the switch that's happened.
Mhm.
That's the switch that's happened, right? Because Democrats have become progressive. Democrats have become about social justice and equality and equity. And the Republicans have seen that the more that that happens, the more you take away my, well, I don't want to be that anymore. But I'm going to still use the banner of Lincoln to protect me and
Right.
pretend though I just hate slavery so much. And that's the only thing that makes me a good person.
It's just, I think all of these people who kind of spout, um, they're originalists when it comes to the Constitution, and we should, if you actually were to look at it, um, there was 10 original, like,
Amendments.
amendments. Thank you. I was like, what is the word I'm looking for?
Yeah.
But like the 14th Amendment is where Roe v. Wade kind of fell within. Um, and I think it's like, if we're going to talk about like protects rights against state infringements, defines citizenship, prohibits states from interfering with privileges and immunities, and requires due process and equal protection, punishes states for denying vote, and disqualifies Confederate officials and debts. And it's been kind of like pulled out and um, added to over the years. So that was not in the original one. That came into pass in 1868 for the 14th Amendment. And I think it's interesting because if you want to really be an originalist, I think that you have to sit there, look at the original amendments, look at the freedoms and liberties that you enjoy today,
Mm-hmm.
and then ask yourself, where is your line? If those were given to you by a legal system that basically said that this is a human right to be able to vote, to be able to have autonomy over your own body, to be able to all be equal across the board, where are you going to draw the line and be like, oh, something's wrong? And will that be too late? Like, yes, we're having conversations now due to Clarence's words about gay marriage. Um,
Funny, the guy didn't bring up interracial marriage. I think that's
right,
same
exactly.
idea, Clarence, but go right ahead. Go off. Yeah.
Right to contraceptive. Um, and basically the privacy, what happens in one's bedroom. And I think it's interesting because people are like, oh, it will never happen. It'll
Yeah.
never happen. It'll never happen. They won't take away gay marriage. And I'm like, or they're like, if they do, it'll return to a state right. Well, that's great. That means that your marriage that is valid in California is not valid in
Right.
Texas. That means the children that you have in your marriage don't count as your kids in this
Right.
state that doesn't recognize your legal marriage. For people who are married to an American citizen who are Canadian or from a different country altogether, that would invalidate the marriage. Therefore, it's a federal issue. Sure, statewide you're recognized as married, federally you're not. So therefore, any immigration proceedings are done. Any uh, people, I feel like people aren't understanding the nuance of the conversation. Where it's like, sure, you want to broad stroke it, it's a state issue. But
Yeah.
what are the ramifications to those people past that? And I think that's where I have a hard time, especially for where we kind of like live and operate, which is TikTok, is these people making these videos who are like, why is everyone freaking out? And
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, why are you not freaking out?
Well, I think number one, I think most people only choose to read the 140 characters on Twitter and listen to the 3 minutes on TikTok, and that's it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's their capacity, and I don't even mean that horrifically negatively. I mean, these are complicated, heavy issues to understand law and constitutionality and application of this law and all of that. Or they don't have the time, right? They have lives like other lives, or um, they like the broad strokes because it makes them feel righteous. It makes them feel a part of something. It makes everything seem, and this is, in my opinion, the biggest flaw in democracy, or the biggest, not flaw, but the biggest, the thing that will kill it. They want everything to seem black and white. They want everything to be black and white, right or wrong, yes or no, no, and it's just not. It's not. It requires serious, serious people having serious conversations. And the more that people stand up and simplify it, right? And then the more that people are like, yeah, that's the side I'm on. All it does is widen the gulf between the two the two parties, and nothing legitimate happens. All that happens is, you know, violence. And I don't just mean physically, I mean a lot of different ways, like legal, political, and emotional violence are all significant. And it just breaks us down further and further and further. And here's where we are. Like Stu, this time last year, if you would have said this would have happened, I would have said, I'll bet my house against it. Even
Right.
with Trump, even with Trump in power,
Hmm.
even with Kavanaugh, that slimy son of a, even with Barrett getting on the screen, I would have said there is no way that somebody that educated, that in that position of power, I mean, in all fairness, I really didn't look into Barrett, but in that position, there is no way they're going to be able to twist and manipulate and use as propaganda the Constitution of the United States when in the past Republican majority Supreme Courts never overturned it. I would have
Exactly.
I would have been all in. Absolutely not. In fact, I said it to I said it will never happen. And now here we are. And Trump said, "Watch it happen. I'm going to get two or three." I've seen the clips because you forget the stupid crap he says, right? I'm going to get two or three appointments, and if I get all three,
It's a
I'm
natural thing to happen.
I'm appointing. He said, "I am appointing pro-life justices, and it will Roe v. Wade will be overturned." Uh, Now, a lot of people have brought up. I don't know if you understand this because I don't know how much I understand it. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was I heard her give an opinion, you know, sort of right before she passed, like in that last part of her life, talking about how she felt that she didn't agree with the way Roe v. Wade was passed. Like she didn't agree with the initial decision, not because she doesn't agree with a woman's right to choose, but she thought it was on faulty constitutional grounds. You under did I tried to read a bit of it and I got a little bit overwhelmed. Did you?
I read about it. I don't know if I'm able to speak on it.
Yeah.
Um,
See,
I
I
think
think
what she was saying was constitutionally, it's the reasoning behind it wasn't strong enough to withstand like the test of time, and she was right. But also, like I think a more important conversation to have is that um I think what she was saying was it would have been more a stronger case if Roe v. Wade was not um a national ruling that like was federally recognized as a invalidating like dozens of like anti-abortion laws in the states. I think what she was saying was it could be used as a foundation like incrementally
hmm,
to take away and limit those rights.
too much too soon.
Yeah.
You would have thought
um
that that would have come back quicker. That with the next Republican Supreme Court, they would have been more quick to overturn it, right? You would have thought back in that.
yeah, I think what she was trying to do too, what she was saying in that clip, and now it's coming back to me, is that she was talking more about the fact that instead of arguing it along the lines of
Right.
gender equality rather than the right to privacy,
Yeah.
because the right to privacy is one thing, but equating the genders and making them equitable, which they both have freedom to their bodies. I think that Kamala Harris asked that question to uh,
Kavanaugh.
Kavanaugh, where she said, "Are there any laws that restrict men's bodies?"
Right.
But I also think an interesting conversation to have, and something that I've been kind of chewing on for a while, is that I loved Ruth Bader RBG,
Hmm.
loved her, loved what she stood for, but also she should have retired. She was asked to retire in the Obama administration,
Yeah.
and they said, if you die or have to retire due to illness, this is a possibility
Yeah.
of it happening. And she refused to give
Yeah.
up her seat.
Yeah.
And now I'm sorry, but like if she had retired, they could have put someone that was uh, a little bit more democratic or like centrist
Yeah.
in the seat, and we wouldn't be in the position we are today. And
Right.
now that it's a radical Supreme Court with it's completely out of balance. And yeah, we can definitely talk how the Democrats have talking points right now of expanding the court, but they can barely get a justice confirmed or a bill passed.
Well, look,
So I don't know how they're going to achieve this.
nobody's sitting here saying, because a lot of people would say, why didn't they codify it in law? Well, they could have. Listen, I can still sit and blame the Democrats for what they didn't do. Absolutely. But I think the reason they didn't do it was is very, very simple. I think they relied on that precedent as being 50 years firmly entrenched. I think just like I did, just like I thought, that is a 50-year precedent. There's no need to make another law because the Supreme Court has done what it's supposed to do. And I think that in and of itself, I think probably just left room to, okay, well, you can go do other legislation. You can go do other things. I don't know how real I would have found that to be. I have no problems expanding the Supreme Court. None. Absolutely not. It doesn't say it has to be nine anywhere. There is absolutely nothing reflecting that. Changing the composition, everybody's like, well, then what happens when the Republicans do it? Okay. Oh, so this is the game we're going to play. We're just going to keep stacking, right? Listen, we're never, heaven help us, having a Trump again, right?
Fingers crossed.
Listen, I can't watch any of the more January 6th things. I'll never look at.
I've been like, this is the thing though, is that like,
I might not ever use ketchup again, but that's just
but like, this is the thing too, is that January 6th happened over a year ago. Like, we're June 2022 right now. And like, yes, I do. And like, I like the fact that they were very careful um, and really dug deep to kind of like pin these people to the wall. Great. But
now what?
like
Listen, I
we're
understand.
watching these things. I'm not surprised by anything. Like, everything that comes out, I'm like, yeah, that tracks.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. My the interesting point, like, yes, it's all everybody sees everything that's happened is all just stacking. It's very Lego. It's all a part of the same set. It's all building the same Death Star or whatever the hell we're doing down here. But sorry, I'm watching a lot of Star Wars recently. I hate to trigger something from your childhood, but while like I don't understand, I'm thinking of the January 6th stuff, and this all goes hand in hand because what it's about is it's about a lack of accountability and a failure of democracy. That's it. People are talking about the United States, it's democratic, it's democratic, it's democratic. Listen, they said that Germany was the most democratic nation in the world. The Constitution was built so a dictator could never take power. Countries from all over the world pre 1939, 1933 copied the German constitutional framework. And then Hitler. So please let's not talk about democracy being this just singular entity where people get to vote. No, no, no. It's a multifaceted, and a big facet of that is holding people accountable. In Canada, we can do a whole other podcast because we all know we're not holding anybody accountable up here either. But not holding people accountable is the first step. As soon as Trump made that call to the Georgian governor and said, cut me some slack, do me a favor, figure out, find me some more votes, I'll take care of you, which is exactly what the son of a gun said.
Yep.
Somebody should have knocked at that damn door and arrested him on the spot. Think about what Nixon resigned because he had some guys break into an office.
I know.
I'm starting to look at Nixon as being a fine. Look, he got a bad rap. He had some guys break. First of all, they didn't find anything. That is the stupidest thing to lose it. Stupidest way to lose a job. Nobody cared that Nixon was secretly bombing Cambodia. But besides that, we're really upset. Meanwhile, Trump is caught on tape coercing a governor to change election results. I don't think we need anything covering January. I don't even think we need anything past that phone call. That's it. You are done.
You're
Simple.
done. Mm.
You're done. Out you go, Buttercup. Like, and there's the problem. There's no accountability. And I think what Americans are really afraid of, and this is what Trump has done horrifically, um, you know, well, is that he has created such fractures in truth that nothing means anything anymore, which also means you have tens of millions of people who don't believe that that don't believe he lost the election. Whether or not they're crazy or not, it doesn't matter. He has fractured that.
Hmm.
So
It's
we're really at an and that's what Americans are terrified of, right? When you talk about JFK getting shot, for example, right? I look, I'll put money on the table. Everybody knew who it was. Everybody who was anybody knew who it was, but they went, if this gets out, our system as we know it is never going to be respected again. It's nobody's ever going to take us seriously. So we have to bury it, not because we don't want to bring them to justice, but because if we bring them to justice, we're highlighting the fragility of the most democratic nation in the world. And Trump, whether he goes to jail or not, has broken that concept,
yes,
you know?
100%. And it's just like it's and I wonder this is the thing. I think like it's I guess it's shocking to me to like listen to these interviews on the news, to watch people defend him on social media, to read these articles written by supporters, and wonder like you look at the Democrats and you accuse them of all the same things, but like you can't critically look at this man and say this does not define the party or
Yeah.
the person that I want to run the party. Like
Yeah.
a lot of people worship him like some sort of second coming, and
100%.
it's such a strange thing to watch because you're watching it being like, but he is flawed. And like whether you like him or not, you I know flawed is like the understatement of the year, but I think like if you were to look at him, you can still follow the Republican Party. You can still be a Republican and denounce Trump. I don't know when they became synonymous, when it became the Republican Party of Trump, because people are continuing talking about a Reagan Republican. Point out one to me. Point out one Reagan Republican, because I wouldn't classify any of them as that, because they were apologists when he was in power, and now that it's somewhat safe, a few of them are speaking out. But like speaking out in the weirdest of ways. I would say that Cheney is the only one,
That's
and Romney, which the fact that I have to defend Mitt Romney sometimes makes me physically ill.
because his
Like,
name is Mitt. Nobody wants to defend a guy named Mitt.
no,
Listen,
it's
and
just
when people talk about Reagan, like, so sorry, so what are you saying? You're saying that the Reagan Republicans, people still respect the Reagan Republicans?
well, people still say that they're a Reagan Republican.
I think they're I think Trump and Reagan are one and the same.
Do you?
Here's why.
Okay, yeah,
Here's why. Reagan, A, is way more charismatic, way more intelligent. Those aren't the comparisons I make. And way less sinister about his application. Having said that, Reagan was nicknamed the Teflon president.
yes,
And there's reason the reason for that is he did horrible things. But because he was charismatic, because he would say things like make America great again, because he'd have these catchphrases, because he used his very strong charisma, because I did like watching him speak, his very strong charisma. People wanted to believe him, and he seemed honest, and he seemed steadfast, and he seemed strong, and he seemed like he cared. But all the while, look at what he did. He created a theory. Reaganomics, trickle down theory, is perhaps the single most debunked failure of an economic system. And somehow Reagan supporters still see that as being the pinnacle of his presidency.
yeah,
What? He was, look, I saw the Elvis movie and I watched Colonel Parker, and he called himself the snowman because he was the best at putting on a show, like stealing money from people and they leave with a smile on their face. They are con men. They are con men. Now, I think Reagan had a built in enemy. He had the Soviets.
Right.
Think about think about what Reagan did in his presidency. He invigorated the evangelical Christian right to a point where you're praying in schools, God's on your money, the whole 9 yards, because he used it as a solidifying force to fight the communists.
Right.
That was Reagan. That was Reagan. That fight was his. He just had the enemy. So who's Trump's enemy? Well, Trump needs to come up with somebody. Trump used the same playbook. He just used Mexicans, and then he used the Chinese and Iranians, and then when he needed somebody in his own state, like in his own government, he used, the gays and the pro choice and trans. He used that group of people. Why? No different than Hitler, where you pick a minority, people aren't, like, you pick a minority, like a very small minority that people can rally around. They don't understand, they don't know, they can get angry at them trying to change the fabric of who they've always been.
Mm-hmm.
They're the same. They're the same. I don't see them any different, to be honest with you. And proof of that was that he just stole Reagan's tagline and rebranded, right? He just rebranded. So I don't know if I see them different. If you're a Republican and you believe that God has a place when you talk politics, I can't stand with you. Not because I don't like God.
Right.
I'm sure he's lovely. I, I just, I don't care what religion it is either, by the way. As soon as you say politics and say God, they have no place together. None.
No. And I think that it's so interesting because, like, I'm not a religious person by any means, but I will defend till my last breath someone's right to believe what they want to believe, their right to practice the religion
Yes.
of their choosing. But that belief should not infringe on anyone else's life or how they choose to operate their life. And if your belief system is impacting people and harming them, that is a problem. And I think that people hide behind religion as a justification for um, narrow minded, very rigid, um, unbending, and frankly, in some regards, ignorant belief systems. And I
Listen,
think it's like they're like, well, it's not in the Bible. Well, yeah, a lot of things are not in the Bible. But also, if we're really going to look at the Bible, and I'm going to say this and I'm being contested,
hey,
I don't necessarily think the God from the Bible is very pro-life. Um,
there's a lot of
like,
smiting.
there's a lot of smiting in there. He sent a fucking flood. Like, I don't know.
A plague and all the firstborn son. Look, there's so much. But if I separate myself, you know what I would love? I would love for somebody to understand this, the fundamental. Not me, because everybody thinks that the government controlling religion means I have to look at you and say you're not allowed to pray on Saturday. That's not what we're talking about here. When you create a basis of society that is one particular faith, whatever the faith may be, right? Um, what you're doing is creating a morality based on that faith that is not just, that is not equitable, that is sure as hell not secular or democratic. So, you know what the first thing the United States should do? Take "In God We Trust" off your money. Do it tomorrow.
Right.
You know what Canada and the United States should do? No more Christmas break. Even if you're calling it holiday, winter holiday, Festivus, I
What's it
don't give
called
a crap
again?
what
The,
you're calling
the Festival of Lights?
it. Take it. Done. Easter. No long. We need to really take physical account of our language and our structure, our foundational structure, if we are going to actually toe the line and say we are not we are not based in a religion anymore. We are not promoting any religion. We are truly, and politicians, you can go home and pray on Saturday, Sunday, Thursday, whatever works for you. I don't care who you pray to, but you step to that microphone. I don't want to hear your thoughts and prayers.
Right. Which
That's
is
it.
interesting though.
There's the line.
Right.
You do what you want in your home with your family, 100%. We shouldn't be funding religious schools anymore. I can't believe that the Supreme Court in the United States, another sort of decision they made, this friggin' machine gun decisions that they're making lately, stipulates that you're allowed to use your tax dollars and refocus them so you can go to a private religious school. What? That's brand new. Yeah. So it's kind of like the whole charter school thing. You should be allowed to go to whatever school you want to with your money. It's a very disgusting way of
I
breaking the.
I also just want to, with the charter school thing, I also love that there's no actual, at least the last time I looked, there wasn't a lot of actual protections on who and what and how a charter school was created,
There's
and like how they use their money and how what kind of education they're offering, because like we see charter schools depicted on television and they're like this wonderful oasis of like creativity, and arts programs are wonderful and they're usually like on a beach somewhere and just gorgeous. But then you actually like look into certain charter schools that are funded by corporations that are just horrific. And I find it so sad that like I guess it's just like at this point, it's sort of a joke, like looking at some of the decisions that the Supreme Court has looked at, because I mean, one, you have Roe v. Wade, two, you have the the absolute inability to manage their gun violence, um, and
oh yeah,
like
you can
they
conceal
can,
your constitutional right to conceal and carry.
right, your constitutional right to conceal and carry, which is great. What fun. Especially in the face of the, I think there's something like 252 two mass shootings currently in the states up to like the 1st of June. 25 of them being school shootings, which is insane to me. Which is insane to me. But Marjorie Taylor Greene can stand up in the podium at the lectern and attempt to rip apart a British reporter by saying you have mass stabbings.
Oh yeah.
Well, um, thank you, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yes, they'll definitely deal with their mass stabbing problem by simply not getting shot. Like it's a problem, but you can easily run from a knife. You can't run from a hail of bullets.
I honestly think we have uh, we have to start at the beginning, and again, we're talking about the United States right now. I can talk about Canada just as easy. There's a lot of private schools in
Same.
Canada, and I won't name names, but there's a lot of private schools, just like schools in general, that create a template. This is how the school is run, right? And
Mm-hmm.
somebody comes in to investigate, they show them all, this is the way we do it, and look at how perfect we are. And then depending on how much you give them, that's what the mark is you get. Look, there's that kind of corruption everywhere, everywhere. And so how do we stop that? Well, there's a lot of things that we could do to stop that, but I think fundamentally what we need to start changing, and the United States need to start looking at, is I think there should be significant challenges to the religious aspects found within government and within the structure. And I think those should be challenged. Now, this Supreme Court's going to say piss off, but I think I want to see the challenges. Why do you have in God we trust on your money? How is that not the government of the United States stipulating, at the very least, a Judeo Christian government?
Mm-hmm.
How is it not? Of course it
Exactly.
is. And
Mhm.
any rational person would say it is. And that hasn't, it's only been like that since 1955. And why was it done like that? Well, it was done like that sort of at the height, or at the beginning of the at the height of the Cold War, kind of leading into Vietnam as this rallying agent in order to put us against them, us, the Christianized, saviors, and them, whoever they happen to be. We need to start attacking and deconstructing those foundations, or else these decisions are just going to keep happening because it's on the structure, it's on the foundation of, we are still a religious country, and a religious country gets to make religious decisions, which is why all of these idiots are spouting about having a soul when a baby is conceived. That has not anything to do with science.
No, it
Having
doesn't.
a soul is a religious belief. I don't want conception. That is a religious belief. That's it. It needs to be out. It needs to never be discussed in a political sense. If you want to talk about your baby having a soul and how important that is in your home, in your family, in your church, in your mosque, in your whatever, again, I support it 100%. But if we have a secular democracy, I do not support it being spoken about or being the foundation of any law or constitutional reform. And it still is.
It's something that I just, again, like you just said, you are free to believe what you want. If you want to believe that you are the fetus that is growing within your body has a soul, great. 100%. I love that. That is your freedom and your choice.
Sounds beautiful.
What I cannot support is you assigning that belief to somebody else and saying that because you believe something, they are unable to have a medically saving advice, or a medically saving procedure, or rights to their own body. And I think that's where I struggle, especially considering like the states has one of the highest like maternal mortality rates in the world.
We
It's
do.
like what 23.8 deaths for every 100,000 live births.
Well, it's because you have no health care down there. Yeah.
No, exactly, but it's like a high rate of cesarean sections, inadequate prenatal care. You have like elevated chronic illnesses like obesity. You have diabetes, heart disease, and of course, like it's like they're like now every person with a uterus is forced by this they believe is forced to give birth, forcibly give birth, but they're not going to expand the healthcare system and the support that they give anyone. They're not going to have any place for these once born children to go and live into. Their foster care system is completely overwhelmed and underfunded. They can't even figure out the children that they do have in foster care. They have no mental health care for anyone. They're talking about mental health as a huge topic after Uvalde, but they've not done anything to expand
That's all money.
mental health care. Exactly, it all comes down to money. But like, and now they've thrown it back to the states, and 13 of those states are going to have trigger laws that come into effect immediately or 30 days after, and they're like exceptions for the mother if the woman is in like immediate danger for some. But like, what does that mean? It doesn't specify that
Sure. Of
in
course.
the opinion.
Yeah.
It doesn't specify that any of the trigger laws. So like, you have that woman, and like, sorry, I'm gonna uh, butcher where she was, but she was in one of the states, and she sat for 9 hours after an ectopic rupture as the doctor conferred with a lawyer to make sure that he was
There.
not going to get put in jail and lose his license.
Yeah.
Thankfully, they saved her, but she was like septic by the
There it is.
time they were able to like get around to it. And that's the issue here, is that if you happen to suffer from a septic uterus or an ectopic pregnancy or a miscarriage doesn't pass out of your body, what is the plan? And these people who are just being like, well, life begins at conception and like, you shouldn't be getting an abortion. Great. Okay, awesome. Show your work though. Like, what is the plan
Show you.
for the women who are going to
They don't have one.
exactly? But
They
then
don't.
they shouldn't. like,
Because then
like this is the thing. They don't have one until it affects them.
100%.
And
Uh,
then they're going to be like, why is the government here to protect me? Where's the government's legal recourse to protect my right to my body? I need this life-saving care, but it's okay for them to look at other people because the infant mortality, the maternal mortality rate for Black women is like 55.3 deaths out of 100,000 births. It's almost double that.
well, that's why we're at another point that we haven't spoken about yet, which Jane Elliott, probably one of my most favorite few people on the planet, talked about birth dearth and talked about the whitening, and how the certain political parties and certain people within politics want to make sure that the white population grows and the white population is getting bigger. And right now we're looking at what, 60% of all abortions coming from white families. And if we can eliminate that, all of a sudden that whole asinine theory of white replacement theory starts to dwindle, and we can fight that to the point where that woman, and a lot of people say it was a mistake, I don't think it was, I think it was written on her damn piece of paper when she said, thank you to the Supreme Court for the white life. Now people say she was supposed to say right to life. Well,
Right.
it was written down wrong, like, or it was a Freudian slip. You know what? Either way, honey, you said white life, and I think we need to talk about the in.
Oh, you're talking about Mary Miller from Illinois.
There we go. Racial
Yeah.
foundations of
Yeah.
this policy and what they think this policy is going to do, and who right now is in foster care, and which children are in foster care, and why they're not adopted by all these, families. By the way, it's kind of my most favorite thing on Twitter right now because you have, and I hate to laugh. Guys, sometimes you need to laugh. Sometimes you need to laugh at the insanity. Otherwise, I would cry or be my blood pressure would be through the roof because
Right.
right after all this happened, you had this couple who claim, or Christian looking couple, white, kind of, I don't know, Wisconsin people, standing there with his arm around her saying, we'll adopt your baby, right? Have you seen that? And now all of these memes are like, today I saw Darth Vader, again, I'm sorry, the Star Wars triggering. Darth Vader and like the Emperor standing beside each other, and at the bottom it says, we'll adopt your baby. Like, this is the interesting, who's adopting these babies, why are you adopting them, what's with the hundreds of thousands of kids you don't feel like adopting, um and then what does all of that mean? And you cannot discount, you talk about women's rights in this, of course, women's rights and people with uteruses rights, anybody who can bear a child, the control of their body, but you then have to talk about the racialized component and the drive of these particular groups wanting a society that is more significantly white, Christian, straight.
Yep.
You know,
100%.
and we have to be able to say that out loud and hold them to it. And again, we're still coming from these ridiculous notions of, you know uh superior culture, superior people. I mean, it's very Hitler-esque. I mean, it's no, the idea, this control of eugenics, and it is no different than 1933 Germany. They're just smart. Well, I can't say smart to Trump, but they just don't say the words in the same way,
Right.
right? They just don't say the words. Hitler said the white race, he talked about Aryan race, the superiority of the Aryan race, and then these idiots are talking about white replacement theory. It's the same crap,
It's the same. Yeah. It's like the same
different title.
argument in different font. It's just like, I just want to go back and make the point of the fact that, like, you said something like, we'll adopt your kids.
Oh my
What
God,
about the other 424,000 children in foster care?
not those
Or,
ones.
or like, it's just like, or like the 114 or so thousand of them who cannot be returned to their families and are now waiting to be adopted. If you want to adopt a kid, that's perfectly fine. But like, let's not for a moment spread this like notion that people are just lining up to adopt these now will be babies that are being forced to have women birth them, and they're just going to go directly into a loving family, or the state is going to provide services for single
Right.
mothers or women who are experiencing poverty, mental health care, just as a general health care,
Yeah.
um, or any kind of services like a food stamp service, social services, anything like that, to help these people raise these now children the government has forced you to have.
It's a lack of consistency. I mean, I've been
It
reading this
is.
all over. I was going to do a TikTok about it, and I just, I don't know. I'll talk about it here rather than there. But the notion that if every life matters, let's put that on the table in a real way for a second. Potential life and real life. I'm assuming that if you're going to have a person that says every potential life matters as much as life, then life matters. The people standing beside me matter just as much as a fetus. I don't think that, but let's put them equal for a minute. Okay? So if I get pregnant, I have an obligation, a legal obligation to protect that life as much as I can. Okay. So then if Stu needs a bone marrow transplant and I'm a match, shouldn't I not be mandated to give you that? If you need a kidney and I got two,
Right.
shouldn't that life matter just as much? Forget me being alive. I'm even going to take that off the table. I die.
Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't I be mandated to donate all of my organs? I'm
Shouldn't you
gonna.
be?
It's not even a choice of my life or somebody else's. I am not using it anymore. No matter what you think the afterlife, I am out of body. So should I not be legally, just as much as I'm legally mandated to protect that fetus that has even developed into anything yet? Shouldn't I be equally, I'm even saying equally, mandated to protect somebody on this planet, walking on this planet, that needs something that I can provide and that won't kill me? Isn't I want
It's
to
a,
hear one, I
it's a
want to
good
hear
question.
one pro-lifer ally themselves with that. Because then at least, even though I don't agree with it, at least we're talking consistency and you're actually putting your money where your mouth is. I haven't heard one. Go ahead, mandate post mortem organ donation.
And that's the best part is the fact that I'm pretty sure I'm not like well versed on this, but I'm pretty sure that a brain dead person has more rights currently than most females in the states because you
Listen,
can't actually take the organs without consent.
you know what? Yeah, well, there you go. Anna made a great point the other day. She goes, "Isn't it interesting that a fetus is alive when it has a heartbeat? But if a person has a heartbeat, but they are brain dead, we can pull the plug?
Yeah. Yep.
Where's the consistency?" Where, I'm
It's
just
also quite funny. I don't know. It's just I find it really interesting that we put more we hold the two up. Like this is the other thing. Is we hold up Sarah Huckabee Sanders made a point
oh, Jesus, I can't. Babies are as safe in the womb as they are in school. That woman said that out loud with
out
no
loud.
irony.
She thought she ate it too. But here's the question for it. Like here's the question is that people were like, or you have that like 12-year-old kid that I kind of stitched his video where he was like, why is it okay to kill babies in the womb but not kill children in the classroom? And people are like, he has a point though. No, he doesn't have a point because what you're saying is you have a mother or a woman rather or a person with a uterus aborts the fetus is the same as them going up to their 2 year old child and shooting their 2 year old child dead. That's the same. It's not the same. You would hold it differently. A classroom full of dead 8 year olds is different than an aborted fetus. And
So
people trying to equate them is not the comparative is not the same.
somebody was in my comments in Twitter a few days ago, and they're like, "A person is a person." I'm like, if you quote Dr. Seuss, I'm gonna have to. A person's a person. So they are assigning personhood as a fetus. Okay, so they're like,
Yes.
that's a person. And I said, listen, you can assign it whatever you want. There are stages of development in which both science and the law and common sense dictates we give different rights and different responsibilities and different levels of protection. And she's like, well, a child's a person. I said, okay, let's run with that for a second. Your child is your property. Heaven help me, I wish they weren't this particular person's property. But you get to make every single decision for that child. Why? Because they don't have any rights.
Right.
They technically have zero rights, zero agency, zero anything until they're 18 years old. We don't even allow them to make their own decisions. You're telling me if that same kid, because it's the same woman that would make the same argument, you don't even want them changing their name and going by a pronoun that they feel that they identify with, because somehow that's not their power to do, that's yours. Different stages allow for different rights and responsibilities. There is no way a sack of cells that you don't even know what it is, to be honest. At 8 weeks, you if you had a miscarriage, you would think you had a bad period for the most part.
Mhm.
And you're telling me that has just as much right as a 5-year old, as a 21-year old? You're lying. You're flat out lying, because the development and the cognitive ability is what makes us human. That sack of cells or that heartbeat does not make them human. It makes them a differentiated block of cells. And to be honest, at 12 weeks, you can't tell the difference between a human embryo and an elephant embryo.
Right.
So what are we saying?
But also too, like I'm gonna kind of build off your point, is that if a child is if you are pro-life and you're going to hold it to this very narrow definition of what life is, then the child that you're bringing into this world deserves not to live in poverty,
Mm-hmm.
which 20% of the children in the United States do.
Mm-hmm.
You have the right to health care and to have a chance. 8 million children in the United States don't have health insurance. That's 1 in 10 children. And it's doubled if you're a minority. There are so many, like nutrition. 12 million American children struggle with access to food and nutrition, and we have them cutting meal programs in schools.
Oh yeah.
Um, like it's insane to me that you want to say that these things are you're pro-life and bring a child into the world because every child deserves or every fetus deserves a right to become a child and live a free life because they could cure cancer one day. If I hear that one more time, I'm going to go insane. But then, great, great, awesome. Give them a good life then.
Yeah. Give them the shot at that.
Give them the shot at that
Yeah.
because 10 to 1 that fetus that will develop into a child, and unfortunately there's a the data will prove it, that it may not have a great life. And I am really, really sick to death of seeing pro-lifers being interviewed who were like, well, my aunt or my mother got an abortion 20 years ago, 40 years ago, and they regret their decision. So I'm here fighting for them. But they made that choice. And in some regards, they didn't, and that should be talked about more. But those, like, most of the time, they made that choice for themselves. And you're basically holding up and saying that their regret of the choice that they made is your foundation to deny that choice to any other person.
If we're going to talk about regrets controlling policy, let's talk about how many people regret getting married. So maybe
Well,
the
exactly.
institution in its entirety should be thrown out the window. Well,
Oh,
because
exactly.
people have the freedom to make choices, to regret them maybe, to learn from them. Nobody will ever know the opposite. That's the thing too, right? Like somebody that makes a choice to have an abortion, they could think about it at the very least. Let's say maybe they think about it. But we will never know what the other path looked like because they never took both paths. So
Right.
that other
100%.
path could have been horrific. Who knows? Nobody knows.
Exactly.
Say which path is worse. We can only say the path that we chose and we had the freedom to do so. Is life perfect? Absolutely not. Should people have inherent rights to control their own body and their at the very least their own body? That's all you got. Let's really think about it. We can't control where we're born. We can't control the color of our skin. We can't control the sexism, the racism, the homophobia we step into. The only thing we can control, and we don't even have control of our own bodies half the time,
Mhm.
especially being women and levels of sexual assault. But if that's it, if that's the basic, then let's at least, at the very least, if we're going to be minimalist about it, let's at least protect, and this is where I go back to life and a person's liberty. And that's why there is one thing I agree with. I wouldn't have made the argument based on privacy. I would have made the argument based on life and liberty, period.
Right.
That's where the argument lies. My life, my liberty comes before any, but I make that choice for me before any other person on this planet. And if that weren't true, I'm going to go down and donate that bone marrow tomorrow.
Mhm.
That's it.
Mhm.
What are you eating?
I was eating cheddar and sour cream chips. I'm so healthy. I'm like a health food
Hey,
influencer.
I'm sitting here I have mini wheats sitting right beside me this whole
Oh,
time.
I miss mini wheats. They were so good as a child.
Oh yeah, you can't eat them.
I can't eat them.
All right, Stu, I know
Why
you
are you so selfish? You eat them in front of me.
I know you have to be off at 8. I know we could probably talk about this for 2 more hours, but thank you for coming on and speaking about something so hard. I look forward to studying what I need to study for next week's podcast. And next time, maybe we do something funny and uplifting, and we'll do like some straight up movie reviews of our favorite movies. You can bring on some, I'll bring on some, and we'll roll into something like that.
I love that so much.
Amazing.
And everyone look out for Joe on our the Rebel Without a Closet podcast.
There we go. I'll put the link, I'll put the name of the podcast in the description below. Stu, thank you so much.
Thank
Everybody that's
you.
listening, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. And if you're going through a rough time, I don't know, take some deep breaths and know that change will happen. And there's a lot more amazing people on this planet than there's not. I will see you next week. Same bat time, same bat station. Bye, guys. Dismissed.